Good morning, everyone.
Good morning,
Good morning,
Rabbi.
Rabbi.
We're learning Mishna Nedarim, Paragimel, Chapter 3, Mishnah Mishnah 5. Now, I'm going to read to you a little bit of an introduction here. A couple of interesting halachas. So, and this is something we had actually ready yesterday. There are two types of Nedarim. Nidre Isser, Nedarim prohibition, where one prohibits something, and Nidre Hektish, Nedarim of Hektish, where one gives something to the base Hamikdash of the temple, thereby making it Hektish, sacred. Although most of the and what if now? So we have this Mishnah is going to talk about Nidre Hektish. That's what it's talking about. Now, if one says this object is Hektish or this object is a carbon, either way, he says this object is Hektish or this object is a carbon, it becomes Hektish, it becomes sacred, the property of the Beis Hamikdash. It may not be used for non-temple purposes. Okay? Now, in most cases, however, it can be redeemed with money. Mm-hmm. The sanctity of the object is transferred to the money, with the result that the money becomes hektish and the object becomes ordinary again. So far we have by nidre hektish, where you make a neder that something goes to hektish. You could either say this object is hektish, or you could say it's a carbon. Now, as you know, we have been using the word carbon for nidre isser also, right? If you say this loaf of bread is like a carbon, so it doesn't become a carbon, doesn't become hektish, it becomes forbidden to you. Mm-hmm. So what's the difference? When is it going to be when you use the word carbon? When is it going to be a neder of isser of prohibition, and when is it going to become a neder of hektish, of sanctifying something to the Beis Hamikdash? So here in the notes, they bring down the following. Had he said, this object is like a carbon, or this object is a carbon to you, or this object is a carbon to me, meaning, so either he said like, right? Either he said like, or he said it is a carbon to me, to you, then we know the object would not become hektish, rather it would become forbidden under the laws of nidre isser, the nidarma prohibition. However, when one says this object is a carbon, and he doesn't whether like, and he doesn't use it referring to somebody else, to people, it does become hektish. So if you want to know when using the word carbon is going to be, you mean a neder of isser, a prohibition, or you mean a neder of hektish, you mean to sanctify something? It depends how you say it. If you say it's like a carbon, or you say it's a carbon to someone, then it's a neder of prohibition. But if you just say this object is a carbon, then you're sanctifying it. Now, when you're sanctifying an object, all right, you have to know the following. If the item he sanctified is fit to be a carbon, for example, animals of species that are offered in the Beis Hamikdash, such as sheep or goat. Okay, so he said on the sheep, this is hektish, or this is a carbon. It becomes sacred like a carbon. It must be offered as such. Meaning, if you sanctify something that could be a carbon, it automatically becomes a carbon. Because you said carbon, or even if you said hektish, the sanctification that you make goes to the fullest degree that's possible. And it must be offered as such. It cannot be redeemed. If something is sanctified to be a carbon, you can't redeem it. It's got to be offered. If the item is unfit to be a carbon, okay, it's a chair, and you say the chair is hektish or the chair is carbon, it becomes a property of the Beis Hamikdash, which is referred to in the Mishnah as Kedushas Bedek Habayis. Literally translated means the sanctity of the upkeep of the house, which can be redeemed with money. Now, when you redeem hektish with money, what do you do with that? Now, we say that money becomes hektish, right? What do you do with it? What happens to it? What's it used for? So it can be used for a carbon, if you want. It can be used to donate to the Beis Hamikdash, or the Beis Hamikdash to use it for whatever purposes it needs it for. It needs it to pay for the upkeep. Now, Normally, the redemption money is used to buy offerings or pay for the temple expenses. However, if he said it is a carbon, as opposed to it is hektish, and the object is unfit to be a carbon, it must be redeemed, and the money may be used only to buy offerings. So if you take a broom and you say, harezu carbon, it can't be a carbon, so it has to be redeemed. But it has to be redeemed. You can't just say, if you go ahead and you say, let's say you specifically say, hareza hektash on the broom. So give the broom to Beis HaMikdash. Maybe they need it. Maybe they'll do what they want to do with it. You don't have to redeem it. But if you said on the broom, it's carbon, once you declare the sanctity of carbon on it, now it can't be a carbon. So it's got, but it has to be used for a carbon because that's the kind of sanctity you gave it. Yeah. So you're going to have to redeem it, and you're going to have to use the money for a carbon, not just donating it to the Beis HaMikdash to use for whatever upkeep or whatever it needs. Okay. With that, let's begin the Mishnah. Hare netiyos ha'elu carbon im enen niktzatzos. This means these saplings, these young trees, are all carbon if they don't get cut down. The case is like this. There's a hurricane. There's a huge storm coming, and he planted these young trees, and he's really scared that these trees are going to become uprooted by the storm. So basically, he says to the Rebbeinu Shalom, he says, these trees are going to be carbon if they make it through. They make it through, it's a carbon. Okay? Or there's a fire burning, and he's afraid his talus is going to get burned. So he says, talasu carbon in this refus. This talus is a carbon if it doesn't get burned. Yesh lahem pidyon. In all these cases, they can be redeemed. Because what did you do? You went ahead and you said the word carbon on these things. These things cannot be brought as a carbon. Even though the wood maybe could have bought from the Mizbeach. So I'm not sure about that. Yeah. But the point is, though, well, it says Yesh lahem pidyon, so apparently they can't. Okay. So for whatever reason, these trees can't be brought on the Mizbeach. Doesn't for some reason, but they're saying carbon, it doesn't work for that, I guess. I guess because carbon means a sacrifice. And it's not a carbon when you bring the wood. I mean, it may be a donation to the Beis HaMikdash to use for the Mizbeach, but maybe it doesn't fall under the word carbon. But okay. Really? But the point is that you use the word carbon, and now what you did is basically you sanctified it, right? Because what's the story at the end? What happens at the end is they survive the storm, or the talus survives the fire. Okay? So now, what are you going to do? You're going to redeem them. And when you're going to redeem them, you're going to have your trees back, you're going to have your talus back. Now, at the same time, though, because you said the word carbon on them, the money is going to have to go for a carbon, as we just said. But these things will be redeemed, and once they're redeemed, they will be usable for your own needs. Normal. Pretty much. I'm not sure. Maybe are there some restrictions? Could be, but it's not like the tree will be, the fruits will be yours. I'm not. I mean, my assumption. I mean, it says before. And the object becomes ordinary again. It says. Okay. So I would assume it's just ordinary. Now, there may be cases that are different. All right. So the point here is that what we have here is that these things became sanctified, but you're going to redeem them. Okay. Next case. Next case a little bit different. The person says, "Hare netiyos ha'elu carbon ad sheyikatzatzu." These young trees shall be a carbon until they are detached from the ground by the storm. Did you get that one? Yeah. He said, these young trees shall be a carbon until they are detached from the ground by the storm. Forget, he said carbon, but here's the difference. Yeah. Before he said they're a carbon if they don't, they're a carbon if they get cut. No, they're a carbon if they don't get cut down. They don't, right? Yeah. Right? If they don't, if they make it, right? Yeah. If they don't get cut down, they're a carbon. If they make it, they're a carbon. And here he says they are a carbon until they don't make it. Okay. Okay. The case before is they're a carbon if they don't get cut down. All right, so if they don't get cut down, they're a carbon. Here he says, and you redeem them. Here he says they are a carbon until they get cut down. Talis zu carbonashati saref. This talis is a carbon until it gets burned. Ein lahem pidyon. They don't have redemption. Now what that means is like this. I mean, basically, the story is like this. The guy said these trees are a carbon until they get cut down. Did they get cut down? No. All right? So they're a carbon. But you can't just, you got to do something now with the sanctity. You got to redeem it. Oh, so you redeemed it. The tree should be usable, right? Wrong. Because you said they're a carbon until they get cut down. So not until they actually get cut down or fall, are they going to become not sanctified. So what that means is that you can't just leave them. You got to redeem them. Fine. And after you redeem them, they become sanctified again. Because when you sanctified it, you said they are sanctified until they are, until they fall down. So if you were to go ahead and to redeem them, all right, you transferred you basically, I'm going to use the word transferred, you stretched the kedusha, so to speak, onto what you redeemed. What the money you redeemed is hektish. You can have to buy a carbon with it. But the tree is still remaining sanctified because it gets sanctified again, basically. You redeem it, but it automatically gets sanctified again because that's what you said. It should be sanctified until it gets cut down. And what happens if it does get cut down? It falls. Then you don't have to do anything. Then it's unsanctified and nothing is needed because you made a limited sanctification. You said until they got cut down. Once they get cut down, as they bring down here or ever, once the trees become detached or the cloak is burned, they lose their sanctity automatically without being redeemed. Because there's no more kedusha. You sanctified it until they get cut down. They get cut down, no more kedusha. But until they get cut down, if you were to try to redeem it, right, you'd now sanctify the money you redeemed it on, but it would become hektish again because the hektish that you made, the sanctification that you made, was until they get cut down. Which means, if you redeem it, it's just going to become sanctified again. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Rabbi. Now, this means